What is up, friends, and welcome back to the Intro to Java web series that I'm putting together. In our last video, we went over getting user input and variables, and in this video, we're going to be going over if-else statements. Now, for this program, what I want the program to do is ask the user to type in a number 1 through 10, and then we're going to use if-else statements to determine if that number is even or if it is odd. Now I'm going to be using a lot of the techniques that we use in the past videos, like getting user input, using variables, stuff like that, block statements. So we're going to get into it and let's just go for it. Let's hop into it. So the first thing you got to do for any program is that you got to create a class. I'm going to go public class, and what am I going to name it? I'm going to name it if else, because I am practicing if-else statements. So we got public class if-else. We have our brackets for our block statement. So everything within these brackets are in our if-else class. And now we're going to create the main method. If you remember, the main method is public static void main string args, just like that. And then we also have our brackets for that block statement. So we're going to use block statements for our if and else statements as well. But before we do that, we're going to prompt the user to put in a number 1 through 10. Now, if you were a part of our last video and watched that video, I want you to look back at that code that you wrote with me. The good thing about when you're writing code is that you can always go back to your old codes and you can use those for a reference. If you don't know how to do something, like if you don't know how to declare a keyboard class or import the scanner class, you can always go back to the last program you wrote that had these techniques in them. So you can see here we imported our java.util.scanner, which is something we're going to have to do if we want this keyboard class as well. So if we want to get user input, we need the keyboard and the scanner class. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight this, and I'm going to copy it, Control C, then I'm going to go to this class, this if-else class, and then I'm just going to Control V and paste it on there. So now we got to import java.util scanner there, and then we can declare our keyboard. So I'm going to go back to the old program that we did in our last video. You see here, I got the comment that says declare keyboard class. So this is why it's important to comment in your programs, because even if I didn't really know too much about programming, this is my first program, I can go back to this program and see, okay, so they're declaring a keyboard class here, they're getting user input here, they're displaying stuff here. So it's really nice to have those things. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, Control C, and I'm going to Control V over here. Now I'm not saying copy and paste everything. It's just certain things where this keyboard class is going to be the same thing for probably all my videos. I'm probably always going to name it keyboard, and this is how you declare it every single time. And you also have to have the import java.util.scanner at the very top. So now that I have my keyboard initialized, I'm also going to declare my variables. So in this exercise, I'm only going to have one variable. It's going to be a number. The number is going to be 1 through 10. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable for that. So I'm going to do a comment, declare variable. And we were talking about variable types in the last video. So we're using numbers in this. So the variable type for this number would be int, because ints are whole numbers, they don't have decimals, and in this exercise we're not going to be using decimals, so I'm going to use an int. And for the int, I'm going to call it num1, just like that. So now my variable's declared. Now you can set it as something. You can say equal to 1 or equal to 0. But really I just want to declare it, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to declare the variable, and then I'm going to define it later. So now that we have our keyboard class and we have our int num1, what we're going to do is we are going to get user input. So I'm going to make a comment. I'm going to say get user input number 1 through 10. Now, if you'd remember, to get user input, we're going to have to display something on the screen so they know what they're going to input. So I'm going to do a system.out.print so I can ask the user to enter a number. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put enter number, do a little space there. Now, you would think this would be good, but in this exercise, we're asking the user for a number 1 through 10. So if I just put number, enter number, they're not going to understand that I only wanted a number 1 through 10. So what they're going to do is they could put any number in there, and maybe if it's larger than 1 through 10, this program won't work. So here, we're going to put 1 through 10, just so the user is aware that you are entering a number 1 through 10, not a number 1 through 100 or 1 through 1,000,000. Don't put any negative numbers in there. Just allows the user to know. Always keep the user in mind when you are programming, because it'll become very useful to you. So now, once we do that, we have to set our variable num1 to whatever the user puts into their keyboard. So what you do there is you go num1 is equal to keyboard.nextInt. Just like that. And I didn't spell keyboard. There we go. And now, as you see, we can get user input. We got our keyboard class. Let's save it and compile it just to make sure we have no errors. It's always good to just do a couple lines of code and then do your compiling it and then running it. So let's see. I'm going to name it if-else because that is the class name. It is a Java type. I'll click save. Now I'm going to run our program. So I'm going to do Java C if-else.java, enter. Awesome, no errors. So we're just going to run our program. If else, enter a number 1 through 10. I'm going to put 1. Nothing happens because I haven't told the program to do anything else other than that. So now we're going to get into our if-elses. So if-elses are very useful when trying to determine something. So I'm going to comment right here, so if-else to determine if number, or I'm going to put num1 to be very specific, because it's num1. Name the variable. Determine if num1 is even or odd. So in if-else statements, they're very simple. All you have to do to start it off, you always start off with if, go if, and then you have parentheses. Now the if statements, you do not put a semicolon at the end. That's a no-no. What you do is you create a block statement for that if. Okay, and I'll explain that earlier. So in that block statement, that's what's going to happen if whatever you say in the parameters is true. So in these parentheses, these are going to be the parameters. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that in these parameters, we're going to set something that lets the computer know that this number is going to be even or it's going to be odd. So in this if, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do num1 is equal to 2. And then I'm going to do or num1 is equal to 4. Or num1 is equal to 6. Or num1 is equal to 8. Or num1 is equal to 10. Now this isn't the best way to determine if a number is even or odd. I'm just using it as an example because I can do the if, else, and the else if to explain all the levels of the if else statements. But just to go over what I did here is within my parameters, I'm letting the computer know that if the user puts in a number 1 through 10, and if that number is equal to 2, if it's equal to 4, if it's equal to 6, if it's equal to 8, or if it's equal to 10, then we're going to do something within these little brackets in this block statement. For example, I can do a system.out print line where I say number is even. So think about it like this. So we got the if num1 is equal, and I'll go over this equal to as well. It's called an operand. It's just the equivalent of equal. So these are Boolean statements. We'll go over Booleans later too. Boolean is true or false. So in this is if num1 is equal to 2, or 4, or 6, or 8, or 10, it will print out this right here. It'll say number is even. So now I'm running a little slow on time, so I'm going to go quickly. So I'm going to do an else. With the else, you do not have to have parameters because the parameters are set. Because if the number is not 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then it's going to do else. It's going to do the other thing. So I'm going to put system.out.println number is odd. So yeah, so that's if else. We're going to go a little deeper into it, but I'm going to save, and then I'm going to compile, and then I'm going to run the program. Now I'm going to go with an even number this time just to see what happens. It says number is even. Perfect. Now I'm going to go with an odd number. Go with 3. It says number is odd. Now there is an issue within this program. So check this out. If I put a number higher than 1 through 10, so I'll put 11, or actually I'll put 12 because that's an even number. I'm going to put 12 and press enter. It says number is odd, which is kind of weird because 12 is not an odd number. But the problem is that what we stated in these if-else statements is that if num1 is equal to 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10, then it's even. But with all the other numbers, the else, with all the other numbers in this world, it's going to say the number is odd. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create an else if. Okay? So else if is just like if you have 3 or more if-else statements, you could do an else if to fill it in, and then at the end you could do an else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the parameters to be set to those odd numbers in this program. So I'm going to put this in the program, and then I'm going to make it so it's 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So those are all of our odd numbers 1 through 10. Now I'm also going to create an else statement over here, which is numbers that are higher than 1 through 10 or lower than 1 through 10. And all I'm going to put is, oops, make that look better. System.out.println invalid number, to let the user know that they didn't put a number 1 through 10, so this program's not going to work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save, and I'm going to run it. We're going to test it a couple times. Got to compile every time, no problems, Java. So I'm going to do 1, see what it says. It says number is odd, so that looks good. Let's try 2, an even number. Number is even, awesome. Now let's try to do something that's over the limit. So let's do 67, enter. It says invalid number. So it's very logic based. If you think about it, you got if. The if statement is all the even numbers, and if any of these are true, then you're going to system print out this. If any of these are true, you're going to print this. If it's not either of these two, then this is going to print out the computer. Now, real quick, one thing is this right here, this is just syntax for or. You can also do and, which looks like this, where it's 2 and symbols. But if we did 2 ands, the program would not work correctly. So we're going to do the or. Because if we did the and, the number would have to be 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 and 10. And that just doesn't make sense. So you got to think logically. You got to be sure you're commenting everything. Write down your algorithms. Work on this program yourself. Write it down. And then test it out yourself. But that will be the end of the video. In our next video, we'll be going over something else. Y'all have a great day and happy coding.